G'day, good evening, I'm Paul Murray. Thank you so much for watching. Tell us who do you think's winner and loser of the week. We'll read them out on the telly, as well as the new names you have for the Greens. God love you people who are on our Facebook page. The Greens apparently want to rebrand. What name can you come up with? 3 words only, no swear words, otherwise I can't show them for you on the telly. You can find all of those and a lot more at our Facebook page. Just go searching for Paul Murray Live. In a second we'll be joined by our panel, and I really think that it's important that while the situation has got slightly, and I mean slightly better, for the Christian refugees who are currently in the far north of Iraq. These are people who are being hunted, and if you've seen some of the darker parts of the internet, they are being killed in the most violent way if they do not change their religion to that of Islam. Now, regardless of whatever your thoughts are of either of the religions, the existence of religion at all, or of course the difficulties that exist in the Middle East, what is happening there is the very reason why we have a front door when it comes to immigration. It is the very reason why both sides of politics believe that people by their thousand each and every year should be able to call Australia home, because the home that they had or the home that they have is somewhere where you can be killed for just being who you are. Not even what you are, but who you are and what you believe. And in some cases it can be about family relationships, or of course it can be about which tribe, or in this case, which religion you belong to. Now, I have copped a lot of hate today because in our promo all day I've been saying that Australia is a Christian nation. And this is one of the reasons why we should accept the Christian refugees who are there in northern Iraq. Now, plenty of people said, well, how disgraceful of you, and confessed, publicly announced atheists to suggest that Australia is a Christian nation. That's an inappropriate thing to suggest because religion shouldn't come into it. Well, the truth is that 68% of Australians, last time I checked, quite a majority, identify as being Christian. And that doesn't mean you have to go to church each and every Sunday. It doesn't even mean you have to go for the big two of Easter and Christmas. But it shows that the majority of people in this country believe that when you die, you go to heaven or hell. And there are thousands of people who are being killed because they believe exactly the same thing. That's what I mean by a Christian nation. A fundamental belief about what happens next. Now, even though that is not my belief about what happens next, I have great respect for people of faith, and the majority faith in this nation is the Christian faith, and these are Christians being killed because they are Christians. The good news, as I said, is that it seems that the violence has subsided just that little bit, and there may well not be an ultimate reason why these people may need to call Australia home. But I hope behind the scenes that Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister's office, and everyone who can be part of this is finding a way to get as many of these people in the process. If they need to go somewhere, they can come to a friendly Christian place that believes in the same thing when it comes to heaven and hell. Because I think we can all agree they are living in a form of hell right now. Keen to know what you think. The hashtag PMLive, email pmlive@skynews.com.au. Our Defence Forces doing a spectacular job, and Vanessa Grimm, you've got some news about just how well they have done today.
Paul, good evening to you. Yes, that's right. The plight of the Yazidis people leaves this news break. The Australian Defence Force has begun dropping desperately needed supplies to refugees in northern Iraq. A possible US mission, though, to evacuate those refugees is now unlikely to take place after a US reconnaissance team found far fewer refugees than previously thought.
The visit was unannounced. At dusk, the Prime Minister and the Chief of the Defence Force arrived at Australia's main staging base in the Middle East.
Always good to see our military forces being put to good use.
A small but highly skilled contingent of military personnel were preparing for their humanitarian mission. The C-130 aircraft on the tarmac ready to make the first drop of critical aid. The Hercules was loaded with 10 full pallets of high-energy biscuits and water for thousands, the first mission of its kind in years.
Good job. Well done. Well done.
For the Yazidi people effectively trapped on Sinjar Mountain, it couldn't come at a better time.
You are putting forward the long, strong arm of Australia to help and protect those people who are at the mercy of the elements, who are at the mercy of the murderous hordes.
Hours later, it was mission complete, but that's only the first of many drops to come.
To the best of my knowledge, that has gone seamlessly.
The Yazidi people continue to face a deadly proposition day to day, but a mass rescue effort by the US military is now looking unlikely. It comes after a special operations team was sent to Sinjar Mountain to assess the situation and found that recent airstrikes had forced ISIS militants back. But those arriving in refugee camps were telling a different story. Many of the Yazidi men, hundreds of them they say, were captured and massacred. Thousands of others remain stranded. Laura Jays, Sky News.
Harriet Rann will spend the next few months behind bars after she didn't apply for bail in a Sydney court today. The daughter of the late New South Wales Premier, Neville Rann, has vowed to fight allegations that she was involved in a stabbing murder on Sunday.
26-year-old didn't make an appearance during a very brief mention of her case, her lawyer indicating the youngest daughter of the late Premier Neville Rann will fight the charges.
It's obviously not guilty because it was before the court. Please get out of the way.
Ms Rann told police she's been living on the streets for the past few weeks, addicted to methamphetamine, but insists she had nothing to do with the attack on Sunday night that left 48-year-old drug dealer Daniel McNulty dead and another man in hospital, telling detectives she was high and only looking to buy drugs. But police say her boyfriend and co-accused showed her the murder weapon and she knew what could and did eventuate. Prominent Labor figures say the late and long-serving New South Wales Premier Neville Rann was incredibly close with his daughter and if he was still alive today would have been devastated by the events of the past few days. Ms Rann next appears in court in October. Cameron Price, Sky News, Sydney.
An explosive day of evidence has seen the New South Wales ICAC inquiry claim its third scalp in just 2 weeks. The member for Swansea has announced he's stepping aside from the Liberal Party amid allegations he accepted a wad of cash in an envelope from Newcastle's Lord Mayor. The Mayor claimed today he's given away almost $7 million to politicians and charities, saying he felt like a walking, talking ATM. The South Korean president has welcomed Pope Francis in Seoul on what is the first papal trip to Asia in 15 years. The pontiff is on a 5-day tour of South Korea, one of Asia's fastest growing and influential Roman Catholic communities. Pope Francis called on the faithful to always remember society's most marginalised and vulnerable.
It's important that special concern be shown for the poor, the vulnerable, and those who have no voice, not only by meeting their immediate needs, but also by assisting them in their human and cultural advancement. It is my hope that Korean democracy will continue to be strengthened and that the nation will prove to be a leader also in the globalization of solidarity.
So, an historic visit for the Pope Francis. Paul, we'll be back with more a little later on.
I like Pope Frank, but also what I like there is that, you know, they do very well on these international tours, those massive banners behind them. Are there honestly printers big enough in the world for those things? That thing seemed massive.
I don't know. I'll look into it. I know Pope Benedict didn't visit South Korea for one thing, but I'll get onto that printer thing for you.
Could you please? Yes, this is the vital story that all of our resources must be on. You can see how powerless I am by none of that will happen. Thank you very much, Ness. Thank you for lending your credibility to this program. If you want to be part of the show at any time, #PM Live. And just quickly, an observation that same people had today about a horrible story, and that is that Zelda Williams, the daughter of Robin Williams, has jumped off Instagram, Facebook and Twitter because some people thought that it was clever, that it was funny, or they were being overtly mean to send mock photos of her dead father in the morgue to her. Now, I know there are plenty of people, and many who may well be watching us right now, who love using, you know, their thumbs and fingertips to say the nastiest things about people, and they think they're awfully clever. Can I simply say, if you are one of those people and you are watching this show, piss off. For the rest of you, more in a sec.
Go on. Go explore. Go with the waves. Lead the brave. Go deep, go steep, try, dare, go everywhere. To oceans where no one's gone.
At Medibank, we believe in better health from day one. So claim 2 pairs of designer glasses from Specsavers straight away. No gap to pay when you join Hospital and Extras by August 15. Better health from the get-go. All part of Generation Better. Search Medibank today.
My mum makes underwater fans that are powered by the moon. She makes aeroplane engines that can talk. She makes trains that are friends with trees. My mum works at GE.
Get even more value with a CRV Plus limited edition. It's a clever combo with fog lights, auto dust sensing headlights, rain sensing wipers, 18-inch alloys, plus front and rear parking sensors. Hurry, it's for a limited time.
Light and Easy is better for us because it's so convenient, it's great value for money, and we both feel so much better for it. We've lost 28 kilos between us.
Call 13 15 12 or visit lightandeasy.com.au today.
This is Campylobacter jejuni, a tummy-churning, far-from-home, trip-spoiling bug. But what if you don't know the local word for bug? We'll help card members find a doctor who speaks their language, in the middle of the night or the middle of nowhere. With 13,830 medical cases sorted worldwide last year, it's all part of the Just What the Doctor Ordered service we deliver daily. American Express. Realise the potential.
I have a surprise for you. Come on.
You hurt me, Aiden.
We can all do things we're not proud of, right? I've decided to move up in the world.
Oh my gosh, you're serious.
I'm always serious.
Clarence, that doesn't even qualify as a lie. That is just noise leaking out of your face.
A star-studded week of unmissable television. All this week on BBC First.
A week of terrorist horror and humanitarian crisis. A week when we lost the ultimate sad clown. Lucky for politics, which bowled us over again with some light relief. We'll make sense of it all on Friday Live.
Thank you very much for watching. All right, very pleased to say we have 3 very impressive women with us this evening to chat over the events of the week and so much more. Georgina Dent, Women's Agenda, how are you?
Well, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Fiona Scott, lovely to have you here. The member for Lindsay, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How
lovely.
are you?
Well, a little overweight, but thanks not for mentioning it. And Sarah Lamarck from the Daily Telegraph joining us as well. Guys, what I had to say, I've made my piece many times over about that the Christian refugees I would like to see. The reason we have a front door is this is a perfect example of people whom should be coming here. Fiona, let's get awkward straight away here, because obviously as an MP, your opinion matters on this. Is this why we have a front door, and is this an example of the very people we need to let in?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, some of the footage that we've seen coming through and into my office as well, which is much more heightened than on the media, and some of my electorate officer staff that are opening these footage are quite disturbed. One of my gentlemen in my office is in fact former RAF himself, so he's quite, you know, a robust gentleman, but these people are being butchered. You know, there's no way you can, it's horrific. Children are being killed, and it's unexcusable, and we have a responsibility, a humanitarian responsibility to take care of these people. Airlifting and dropping resources and food into them is so crucial, but how we can then also help getting these people out of there and rehousing them. The government has already said to find 4,000 additional places is important, but look, I think it's our responsibility to do as much as we can, and it's a crisis. It's absolutely a crisis.
Well, hallelujah. I mean, I can't disagree at all. I mean, Georgina, obviously, you know, the pushback I get about this stuff is, well, what's specific about this group, not being butchered in Africa, or pick anything. The point is, I'm not suggesting that this is the only criteria by whence we bring people in, but Australia identifies itself as a Christian nation about that simple idea, not about church, just about heaven and hell, and I'm an atheist. I think there is an expectation to help people with similar beliefs.
Look, I absolutely agree that this situation there is diabolical, and what's happening absolutely needs our attention. I think probably the distinction that I would make, and I think, you know, it is difficult to try and categorise catastrophes in terms of what requires the most resources and what requires the most attention. And I don't necessarily think, for me, it needs to be on a religious basis. I think if people are being persecuted in their home country, then they qualify to be a refugee, and I think we need to treat those people compassionately. I agree with Fiona that we have a humanitarian responsibility to treat those people as best we can. If that means giving them asylum here, then doing that. I also think, though, it is tricky to reconcile that and that response, which we should have, with how we are treating refugees that are currently in our care. And I think, you know, there are serious questions to be answered at the moment about how children in particular are being treated. And I think that I don't think you can look at this situation and think this requires attention and we can gloss over the rest of the stuff.
Well, no, not at all. It's just simply, you know, I want to, you know, in a world of 6 billion problems, yes, I want to highlight in this here, and we'll gladly talk later about that report that's around today. It's worth discussing. But Sarah, again, is it inappropriate to view an urgency here in part based off religious familiarity? Because obviously they are being killed because of whether they believe or don't believe in this version or that version of God.
Well, I think that in itself is horrendous enough for us as a compassionate country to extend a humanitarian gesture of, a very important gesture of taking these people in. I don't think it's because of religious familiarity. I don't think that should be any basis of it. I actually reject the notion that Australia is overwhelmingly a Christian country. Certainly the census shows that's what a majority of people identify. If you dig a little deeper, actually a majority say that they are of no religious persuasion, but if pressed, they would say, well, I went to Sunday school when I was 10 once, so okay, if I have to tick a box, I'll pick Christian. So I actually reject that as the premise.
There is an option to tick which is nothing. So if you
But a lot of people feel, like I say, when people are spoken to about this, they are saying that they sort of feel that you're expected to pick one faith, and if they're going to pick one faith, that's what they lean towards. I've spoken to a lot of people that say that they're probably agnostic, but they will still identify as Christian in a censorship. Look, this is a very big discussion. Probably don't want to get too bogged down. Suffice to say, I do have a different view to you, but I don't disagree with what you've said about there's so much tragedy in the world, and people do connect with certain tragedies for a reason. I was part of a media panel early this week where we talked about compassion fatigue, which probably some of your viewers have heard about, which is that there's just too much bad stuff going on in the world for people to emotionally empathise with each of them. And this is one of those instances where people have seen it and we have thought we have to do something. It's happened before. It happened in Kosovo. It happened with East Timor, where Australians felt, I think, fabulously, thought, you know, we're a good country, we can help here, and I think that's what's happened.
Yeah, and look, I hope the situation is not required, but certainly my view is very definite about what needs to happen should it continue to be the way that it is, or even get any worse. There's plenty to talk about, and we'll get into all of that in a second. If you want to be part of the show, jump onto the Facebook page, go searching for Paul Murray Live, because all the trolls have gone. I told them to go away. More in a second.
At Medibank, we believe in better health from day one. So claim 2 pairs of designer glasses from Specsavers straight away. No gap to pay when you join Hospital and Extras by August 15. Better health from the get-go. All part of Generation Better. Search Medibank today.
Are you peckish, hungry or starving? At Hungry Jack's, with flame grilled beef, cheese and barbecue sauce, you can enjoy a single, double or triple barbecue cheeseburger from $2. Yeah, just $2. The burger's better at Hungry Jack's.
Rise and shine. Rise and... Ground floor. Have a nice day.
Take ticket. Take ticket.
Stand clear. Next stop, Flinders Street. Welcome to the cruise zone.
Take your ticket and wait in line.
Good morning, sir. How can I help you?
Can your bank greet you with a friendly concierge? CommBank can.
Don't make eye contact.
Discrimination leads to depression and anxiety in Indigenous Australians.
Not even for a Schmacko's twirls!
That's so wacko, that's so wacko for Schmackos!
Out here, in the quiet corners of Australia, is where I'll find it. Born of patience. Nurtured in isolation. It's my life's obsession. So, I've journeyed out here to the quiet corners of Australia, where flavour lives.
The brand new season of Paddock to Plate starts Wednesday, September 3rd, only on Lifestyle.
A week of terrorist horror and humanitarian crisis. A week when we lost the ultimate sad clown. Lucky for politics, which bowled us over again with some light relief. We'll make sense of it all on Friday Live.
Thank you for watching. If you want to be part of the show, feel free. Here with Fiona Scott, with Sarah Lamarquin and with Georgina Dent. Interesting suggestion from Mr Scullion, who is the Indigenous Affairs Minister, which is about a pretty direct message, which is if Aboriginal families don't send their kids to school, then eventually welfare will be taken off them as a result of it. I like the idea because if that is the thing that needs to be done to motivate, to make sure that the next generation is able to learn and educate and motivate themselves out of that poverty, I don't have a problem. That is where I think this is coming from. No doubt there will be all the traditional whinging and moaning that comes with this, but I can't see a problem with the idea. We'll see what the panel thinks in a second, but first, the Minister speaking to our very own Dan Borger.
The experience in some of the SEAM communities is as soon as they know that they are going to lose some of this income, this Centrelink income, that they get the kids to school. We're not interested in breaching people. We're not interested in taking and fining people. What we're interested in is in getting the children to school. And I'm very confident that this initiative will see a significant change in the community. And certainly it's terrific to have such support from the community leaders and from the Education Consultative Committee.
Sarah, I know that ultimately if you take away the assistance you could further punish children from bad parents, but as a method of doing it, is it at least worth trying?
I think it is. I do. Because breaking the cycle of students not attending school in that sort of long-term entrenched truancy is really important, because we know that that's where it begins. If a child isn't getting in that cycle of going to school and thinking about the future and thinking maybe they could actually do something with their lives, by the time they're 10 or 15, research shows it's very hard to recapture them later in life. So yes, obviously it is punitive, and it could have an undesired effect that isn't intended, but I do think it is worth trying.
Georgina, it's that thing again where, as I said, you can tell what the predictable resistance to this is, but is it worth trying? Is it too harsh? What do you think?
Look, I think I agree with Sarah in the sense that it is worth trying, but I also think that, as you sort of said, I think that the Minister's intentions when he talks about this are in the right place. I am aware, though, there is some sort of resistance, you know, in terms of the cultural expectations around school, and I think there probably needs to be a level of consultation with communities around before implementing a program like this. I think probably there really needs to be a robust discussion about what is the best way to engage the Indigenous community with the education system, and is the current system working in that regard, and if it's not, what are the ways of making it work? And
is it something that should apply outside Indigenous communities, that basically it is a rule for anyone who's taking, who's receiving welfare? I mean, obviously there might be an identifiable systemic problem among an Aboriginal community, but I'm pretty sure on the outskirts of any major town, you could show a similar thing.
Well, I suppose on the face of it, it does. It seems to make sense. You know, if you do have a long-term truancy problem, then perhaps this is one way of trying to address it.
Yeah.
Whether or not it works and whether or not it does have adverse consequences, I think you'd probably have to be wary of that.
Now, let me guess, Fiona, as a government MP, you think it's a great idea. But on top of that, I do want to ask you, though, about, is it important with these sorts of things that it's reviewed after a certain period of time, or to make it a hard and fast rule, you don't put those things in, it's basically now until the end of time? What's the effective way of actually carrying this out?
I actually agree with the two ladies that I think we've got to try something. And as part of my parliamentary committee work, I've actually been out to some of the rural remote places in the Northern Territory. The committee at the moment's working on an inquiry into drug and alcohol abuse, and it's just devastating. It is so sad, some of the things that's actually going on within the Indigenous communities. As someone that represents a region of Sydney that is in the outer suburbs, Western Sydney does actually have the largest Aboriginal population in the country. But social disadvantage is social disadvantage, and in fact I actually have the lowest SES school in the state, is in fact in my electorate, and you know, it's near on 60% of the population of that school have a refugee background, and nearly 30% of the kids at that school are Indigenous. So the challenges there are quite immense. I mean, if there is any silver bullet for breaking social disadvantage, I think education is probably the closest. And I think it's crucial to give these kids a better chance to break that cycle. And when talking with the educators at Chifley College Dunheved campus, which is just such an amazing school that so does not deserve at all to be bottom, because the teachers are so passionate and they work so hard for these kids. I mean, these are teachers that have to give kids breakfast in the morning before they turn up to class. These are teachers that they wash the clothes for the kids. You know, they're amazing, passionate teachers, and the school system is so important in that, and how they actually embrace those kids. And I think getting the kids to school is so important. We have to encourage the parents to get there, but there has to be, I believe, other services that wrap around those families too. But
it is that thing, though, where, Sarah, I mean, again, we do talk about it seemingly as this great other about Aboriginal kids. The truth is that I think that if it can be proven to work here in that subsection of the community, I think why not wider?
Absolutely, and funnily enough, I happen to know a teacher who works in one of the schools in Fiona's electorate, and she has talked to me over the years about this exact problem. When we talk about Indigenous communities, she is like, you know, I have children that, you know, aren't getting breakfast in the morning, they're not getting fed, their parents aren't there, they don't come from a background themselves where going to school is part of their life, and it can be very hard for some middle-class Australians to realise that this is happening in lots of communities all across Australia. So I absolutely think that this should be a policy that is extended to everyone. Absolutely.
Well, we'll wait and see. Interesting data that was around yesterday. We didn't get a chance to talk about it with so much other news around, but the wages stats showing that the average wage went up by less than inflation, the best part of 2.6%, as opposed to the inflation rate of 3%. Georgina, why is it Tony Abbott's fault?
Paul, I resent that implication.
Okay, my apologies. But proceed to tell us why it's Tony Abbott's fault.
No, I won't attribute that to him, but I do think it's interesting actually in that piece that they think that some of the resistance to the budget by the Senate has buoyed on the economy in the past few months, because the general population is starting to believe that some of those measures won't actually get passed. I mean, it is quite concerning, I think, when we have an economy that is difficult in a lot of ways. You know, we know that there are job losses happening. We know that people are struggling with cost of living, and so a figure like that is quite startling when you think about what the impact is going to be. But
a strange thing, though, I mean, cost of living is going to be one of those indices by which I feel we are going to debate for all time, and no one will ever think that they have enough, and will be able to obviously show for a lot of people that it's going to be much less than they actually need. But Sarah, is it something that has a political dimension to it? Is it, or is it I mean, I would think there's just an awful lot of industries where wage freezes still exist. There's a lot of sort of practical things that aren't necessarily to do with the strong arm of government, this one or previous.
Yeah, I think this has been going on for a while, is my sense. I think that we don't necessarily value labour as a big resource. There are lots of companies all across Australia, 10, 15, 5, 1 year ago that say to their employees, we're just going to have a freeze on wages. And it's like, wait a minute. That is a huge part of your business. You can't just treat people like they aren't part of your productivity. They're not delivering the bottom line. So I actually think we have a bit of a cultural problem where employers and big business sometimes think it's okay to say, tighten your belts, guys. Well, no, because the rest of cost of living does rise, and I think that's what this figures. But to go back to the point, though, which people are saying that, part of it is because people do think that a lot of these tough measures aren't going to get through. Well, I think Clive Palmer and his cronies have to take a lot of the blame for that, because they're the ones that are sort of out there beating their chest going, it's not going to get past us. And so if you've got this very uncooperative environment, I think that sort of feeds into this mood as well.
I mean, obviously, Fiona, anyone who's in business is going to say it's the cost of doing business and all of the litany of reasons why, and that's why we don't pass it on to the workers. But it seems to me that it's a little bit like, all of the different petrol stations that all just seem to have an eye on each other, or all of the people who own a rental property are all here in the news that rent is going up or rent is going down. It's one of those classic market forces. Do you think that there is a reasonable caution that exists in Australian business about being pretty light on when it comes to a pay rise?
I think the Australian economy overall is still tentative. I think, I mean, maybe I'm jumping ahead of myself, but you look at the pictures of the Greek Olympic Games venues, and hearing those sorts of stories, seeing what's going on internationally at the moment, I mean, I think it makes business hold their breath. And I do agree with you. Employees are your biggest resource. I mean, as someone that's worked in the corporate sector most of my career, I mean, you're only as good as your staff, and you're only as good as the contractors that work for you and work with you. And, so you've got to have that balance that your staff are motivated to want to actually go that extra mile. And, for me, who was in marketing, you can have the best plans in the world, but when everything goes pear-shaped at 2 o'clock in the morning, for whatever reason, it's that person that will answer the phone. And if people are not inspired, then they don't answer the phone. And, it just is what it is. So, but I do believe the Australian economy is still wanting to see that stable. The last government was very unstable with leadership and speculation, and so looking back on itself. Clive Palmer's not helping in some ways of what he's saying. And
But I was going to say, but isn't there a potential reverse effect, though, here, which I think in part was what you were saying, which was that it's because there's a belief that the things that had been suggested by the government won't happen that give them the confidence to think, oh, well, I can spend my money because I'm not going to have to spend it on co-payment, on this, on this. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that'll be the thing. All right, well, of which Clive Palmer, who, can't stand him, but I somehow think he's going to go all right in the next little while. Don't. Let's talk about Joe Hockey and these bloody cars. This is the beat up of the week. The beat up of the week. Can we please go toe to toe if I'm wrong on that? Because look, friend or foe, think I don't get it. My mate Mark Latham hooked into us on radio today because what am I not seeing here? It is a statement of fact that if you are richer, you probably could own maybe a couple of cars, be a two-car family rather than a single-car family. As the numbers prove, top 20% to top 20% of people spending 3 times as much as the bottom 20%. This is a fact.
Yes, but it's not. It's been misrepresented because in terms of the proportion of your income that it is, people on lower incomes spend more of their household income on petrol than people on higher incomes.
Okay, I don't disagree about the impact of that. But what was being suggested yesterday, based off what was said, and the reaction to it. You basically, it was again feeding into this, this media sausage machine that is about Joe Hockey's so rich he doesn't understand how normal people work, and he thinks poor people shouldn't drive cars.
Look, I think that, the two major issues as far as I can see with that is the first one, that it isn't factually correct. When you're talking about the impact and as a proportion of your income, people on lower income spend more on petrol than higher income as a starting point.
As opposed to total amount used.
Yes. But the second point is that this is coming from the Treasurer, who is in a situation where he's trying to desperately sell a budget where one of its main criticisms is the inequity within it and of its outcomes. So it just seems a really curious sort of misstep to use those terms that he did. It is sort of a patronising statement, and then I think the way he's digging his heels in, it sort of just reinforces that perception, whether it's true or not, that he is not someone who he's out of touch with the Australian voter.
But what I find frustrating, look, the Telegraph went hard on this today, Sarah, as well. It's again this idea, and I get in trouble for defending it, but the reason is just I call BS on this idea that because you have money, and because in this case his wife has money, you somehow are completely incapable of being able to either administer this portfolio, or anything you say about the bottom third of people is said with a sneer, because it's not true.
Oh, sure. I don't disagree with that, but you would have to concede that this has been a marketing stuff-up. It just has. If I was teaching PR, this would be lesson number one. If you go out and you're talking about a policy and all the sound bites on the news and the headlines are, Treasurer says poor people don't drive, then something has gone wrong. Now, you could say, oh, it's a stupid media. If you were Stephen Conroy, that's exactly what you would say. As a journalist, funnily enough, I reject that. I say no. I'm not unsympathetic to what he was trying to say. If you hear what he said today, when he was sort of in damage control, he was trying to make a point that a well-off family could be paying 3 times more than a low-income family under the fuel excise. That got lost yesterday. He misspoke to use.
Well, that's true. But as I said, I mean, when you got Channel 2 and their website running a 5-year-old photo of him and his wife in the back of a limousine, it's playing to what you think he said as much as actually using the words that he said. Here is the Treasurer trying to again deal with it all today.
I can only get the facts out there and then explain the facts, and how people interpret them is up to them. Now,
I mean, just saying poorer people either don't drive cars or don't drive cars very far, just as a bald statement, it does sound quite callous and insulting to them.
Well, I'm sorry if that's the case, but the fact is that the Labor Party says that it's an unjust initiative, unfair initiative. Higher income people aren't paying enough. Well, here is an initiative where higher income people pay on average 3 times the amount of lower income households.
As I said in the promo today, I love this idea that to tell the truth is a scandal. But anyway.
No, it's not. But I also think another factor in terms of one of the realities of petrol and cars is that petrol is not a luxury item. You don't sort of think, oh, you know what, I'm feeling generous this weekend, I'm going to fill up the car and just drive around the city for fun. People fill up the car as much as they need to. It's not an expense that you can be particularly flexible about. It's not like you can say, I'm going to eat rice and tuna all this week.
A little bit like electricity and the idea of, do you do something that increases the price of electricity and somehow you're just going to use the light less to help cool the planet? Little?
No, I would disagree.
Right, okay, but the whole point is that we're saying there's price sensitivity about petrol, but there's not price sensitivity about electricity and how it was used, and the fact that, the introduction of a carbon tax meant there was an extra 10% on top of those bills that you couldn't avoid.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
All right. Well, Fiona, how do you feel about it? Do you think the Treasurer got it wrong? How's the selling of it? Did he get it right? What's happened here?
For starters, I actually really don't like it when politicians, partners or families are dragged into debates and used in incorrect ways. And I agree with you that the photography of Joe with his wife and the repetition of that, I find that I don't think if you have to resort to the lowest common denominator, I think that's lowest common denominator area. Look, factually, if you go off what the census said or the ABS said in the stats, then yes, he is correct. And that is that families...
But you know what the optics are here. I mean, this is the thing, is that... And Georgina said something interesting, whether the perception is true or not.
Yes.
True or not, you have to deal with it. Now, with this here... how frustrating is it for a politician when people have made up a presumption about you, fair or not? As somebody who, you know, we've spoken about you on the show and people making up fake photos of you and comments during the campaign, all of that stuff. How frustrating is it when a made-up reputation precedes you?
Oh, look, I've dealt with it for a very long time now and have had my footage cut in half and ripped to shreds to make me say all sorts of things which are not even nearly near my opinion and downright offensive. And I mean, you just have to rise above that. And
yeah.
And sorry, I thought you were going to say something.
You're all being too polite.
No, well, I can be a lot more.
I was going to say yes. Yeah,
but you know what? That you have to. I mean, look, I'm not going to let that change who I am as a person or be a. You know, if someone wants to make an incorrect statement by me, it says so much more about them and what's in them than what it is about me. And I'll be truthful to who I am.
But I think where I was going to interrupt you wasn't about your situation, but is more in terms of the situation with Joe Hockey, in that is he being made out to be this sort of rich man with who's got no...
God forbid you smoke a cigar, but anyway.
But I think, again, look, perception becomes reality.
And in politics... But that's so wrong about Joe Hockey. I mean, Joe Hockey is a
what
man...
I was going to say, though, is, and this is what I'm coming to, is the fact that he is trying to sell a particular budget, and unfortunately, the way that has been executed has has sort of underscored the narrative that this is a man that is out of touch.
So no Medicare co-payment until the investment properties are sold?
I think also the fact is that where the government is running into trouble in trying to sell components of the budget is that these are policies that weren't slated before the election. They have sort of been thrown upon us and they haven't been particularly, well advocated for. I have written quite a few times about this, that with the paid parental leave policy, for example, if Tony Abbott was passionate about implementing that, he should be out there selling it, talking about why we need to change our attitudes around working women and why... And yet we've had virtually silence.
But if he said something about it, it'd be he's got a woman problem. I mean, every time he attempts to talk about this stuff.
He's taken the policy to 2 elections, and he hasn't
engaged in the debate about it. He hasn't once on the record said why the investment should be made in paid parental leave instead of childcare if the goal is to increase female workforce participation. There just hasn't been that sort of meaningful dialogue around it, other than saying we need a fair dinkum paid parental leave program, which I accept we absolutely do. But it just seems like with a lot of these policies, they haven't been sold properly. So they have been on the back foot, and it has meant that Joe Hockey is vulnerable to being portrayed in these ways. And then unfortunately, when he says things like poorer people don't drive as much, it just underscores that. When he's seen smoking a cigar, it just reinforces this image. But you can't say that that's just someone imposing that upon him.
Can I pick up on 2 points there? For starters, when it comes to childcare, now one of the big issues for childcare is about affordable childcare and flexible childcare. And, trying to get childcare for night yourself, there are big challenges there. Susan Lee, the Assistant Minister for Education, this week has put out submissions for you to actually put in to actually talk about how we can actually find more affordable and flexible childcare. The government is doing a lot of work in this space. The two things don't have to be independent of each other, and I totally agree with you that these are big challenges for women to get back into the workforce. I mean, I'd love to have a family, but you know what? I don't at this point in time in my life, and I see my sisters and girls like yourself trying to juggle all of these balls at the same time. And it is one of those big issues for women getting into the workforce.
I've got to take a break here, but it's look, there's plenty more we can get into all of this. Sarah, sorry to cut you off because I think you're about to say something as well, but we're going to take a quick break. Back with more. We're live across the country, only on Sky News.
Get even more value with a CRV Plus limited edition. It's a clever combo with fog lights, auto dust sensing headlights, rain sensing wipers, 18-inch alloys, plus front and rear parking sensors. Hurry, it's for a limited time.
At Medibank, we believe in better health from day one. So claim 2 pairs of designer glasses from Specsavers straight away. No gap to pay when you join Hospital and Extras by August 15. Better health from the get-go. All part of Generation Better. Search Medibank today.
You need a great website. Why not do it yourself?
And keep looking out, doing what you do, walking on top of the world, walking on top of the world. Oh, you're beautiful.
Show the world what you can do. Create your stunning website today. Go to Wix.com. It's easy and free.
Rise and shine. Rise and... Ground floor. Have a nice day.
Take ticket. Take ticket.
Stand clear. Next stop, Flinders Street.
Welcome to the cruise zone. Take your ticket and wait in line.
Good morning, sir. How can I help you?
Can your bank greet you with a friendly concierge? CommBank can.
We've got good products, good prices and good advice.
Bistro seating, only $49. Makita circular saw, $109. Polyrattan pot, just $14.98.
Bunnings Warehouse. Lowest prices are just the beginning.
This is Shamway and he's my new best friend.
Next.
This is a carry shell and I found it on a very remote beach called Rafferty's Bluff where we went for the weekend. My brother also found a long piece.
They must have bought a Jeep.
Someone is saying my son was murdered.
Somebody did it to him. I know who it was.
Stand with me. We can lift the lid on this.
You will shut up and do exactly as you're told.
When will these victims be heard, Mr. Speaker? When does their day for justice come?
Sky News Property is your new online resource for investment news, advice and opinion. The vital stats suburb by suburb. The best in the business help you make the right move. property.skynews.com.au.
All right, thank you very much for watching. We're here with Georgina Dent from Women's Agenda, the Liberal member for Lindsay, Fiona Scott, and the delightful Sarah Lamarquin, who is going to sing on this show when her single, No Doubt. I have not forgotten. I have not forgotten, as she's in the Daily Telegraph. Oh, drats. We'll get the band in next time around. The Greens want to change their name. I don't know why, but there's a suggestion about it and the idea about rebranding their purpose and all the rest of it. So plenty of you have had some pretty funny suggestions, and we'll get some of these here. I would like it to be just 3 words or less, because otherwise it'd be ranting and all the rest of it. The simple thing is, why would it need to be done? I mean, the Greens, I think, about what they stand for, have redefined themselves, but is there a real need to rechange the brand name? Anything short of watermelon, what's the point?
Well, it's an interesting discussion, because the point being that green is obviously about environmentalism and that was their foundation, but they've moved beyond that, and so they want something that suggests that they have a broader platform. You know, they're about social issues, education, same-sex marriage, blah, blah, blah. But of course, you could talk about truth in name for the 2 major parties, couldn't you? The Labor Party, certainly during the Hawke Keating years, very much moved away from that, being, you know, the party of the working people necessarily. Liberal, of course, if you meet an American, they think when they hear Liberal Party that this must be small L Liberal, like party, the Democrats. So those 2 parties have transcended their name. I would argue that the Greens probably have too, and I think changing the name is the least of their
So, what are you suggesting? Some sort of, you know, social democratic reform party or something like that?
Well, I think that's what people that are lobbying for change are suggesting. Yes.
That's funny, Matthew. His suggestion via the screen was the Sea Patrol Party. Very well done. Fiona, I don't know if I'm sure you have a view on this, but are you happy with the name The Greens, or do you want them to run as a different name?
Look, I don't have an opinion on it. I mean, if I was to go back into my former life as a marketer, I would consult them against that. I think you have a brand equity, you have value of a brand.
And sorry, I'm saying like a mark now, but I just, you know, they have people that understand what that means. And I mean, if we actually look at what happened in the Senate with Liberal Democrats and Liberals and the confusion around all of those things, I think people know who the Greens are, they know what it is. I don't think changing the name is...
Do they need to change the name? I always thought that was the sign of a bad boss, is when you change the name or the logo of something.
Yeah, look, I don't even have a background in marketing, but my instinct, and I might be a terrible marketer and my instinct off, but I would say it would be crazy to walk away from the brand identity that you have, and that it's possible to, you know, we've seen a lot of, I think it is possible for individuals, for companies, for parties to reinvent themselves without necessarily changing the names. Yeah. I also would have thought potentially the Greens have got that advantage if they want to, you know, in terms of having that focus on sustainability and environmentalism, if they, you know, they could stand a strong case with that.
It seems to me like at the end of the day it's probably something where you're supposed to go onto the Greens website, leave your email address, and it's a way of expanding the number of people they can write back to. And, you know, we fall for it, but we had some fun with it certainly on the screen. James Bracey, standing by in a couple of moments' time. I'm going to just go a little bit early here with a segment we do each and every week called Winners and Losers of the Week. Find the nearest monitor near you, mate, because how's this for a suggestion of the winner of the week is me, because I get to talk to the hunky James Bracey every day. Thank you, Matthew. Would you like to say anything specific to Matthew, James?
I bet you that's Mum disguised as Matthew tonight. But, yes, thank you, Matthew. I really appreciate the compliment.
Thank you, Richard. Richard Freeman jumping into shot again.
He said to me tonight, Paul Murray, he said, once you do your cross, let me know so I can make sure that I'm in shot, not out of shot. So he's learned.
For goodness sake. All right, what are we getting in a couple of minutes' time? By the way, at Richard Freeman on Twitter. Go for it, mate.
Yes, can find a camera, Richard Freeman, I'll tell you that much, and a microphone. Greg Inglis on fire tonight, Paul, to open the latest round of the National Rugby League. The Rabbitohs and Broncos fought out a very one-sided affair. So we'll see the Rabbitohs looking at premiership credentials here too. Shortly, Adam McDougall, former Bunny himself, giving his thoughts on that. Big round ahead in the AFL, some key ins and outs too. We'll preview it all shortly too. And of course, the big debate happening today, particularly in Victoria. Should Melbourne bid for the Olympics in 2028 or beyond? So we'll have a look at that as well.
Yeah, right. Well, if anyone from FIFA is involved in the voting, no. But yeah, good luck to Melbourne. Why not? Get every right as everyone else to go for it. Thank you, mate. Now, let's jump into a couple of other quick things here, ladies, including the changes in New South Wales that are all aimed about getting rid of Clover Moore out of Sydney City Council. But there is a wider issue about this that I think matters a little further north, south, east and west of central Sydney, which is the idea is that businesses will get 2 votes, whereas the average citizen would only get 1 vote because, of course, business pays more rates. Now, I thought that there was a massive change to this country a long time before we were even near a federation that meant the landowners no longer got the say, the people did as well. Now, I think that the business owners deserve a vote, but I don't understand the logic of 2, and I certainly think if you start talking about country councils where there might be a certain developer or somebody who owns the big string of shops, they're always going to get their way, aren't they? You know, I don't care when it comes to Clover Moore because it works for my perception, which is get rid of her. But I think there's something a bit skewy about democracy when you give one person 2 votes because of the cash.
Yeah, I think it seems fraught, and particularly if you look at what is happening in New South Wales at the moment. I mean, there's a lot of press currently about vested interests and how vested interests are exerting power over governments already.
Which I should say today, for those people who get annoyed if I don't mention it, the 9th New South Wales Liberal MP 9th New South Wales Liberal MP to move aside about even more allegations about this time $1,500 that was apparently illegally put into a campaign contribution. Wow.
Yeah, I would have thought against that sort of background and that context, this seems madness to be sort of giving more power to people who already have got an ability to wield power over governments that we are all learning about daily.
Yeah, and I've got to say that one thing that I found kind of strange about this, look, you know, Alan's a friend, but the idea of getting a shout out from the politician who's pushed the idea through to Alan Jones and the Telegraph. Look, we all know media, and particularly in Sydney and Melbourne, you know, a presenter on 3AW can advocate for something, the Age of the Herald Sun, it becomes a campaign. Campaign journalism sometimes, often results in a change in the law. There's no bigger act in town than Alan Jones, and therefore that can work. But it's weird to get a shout out about it. It's sort of implied that this power exists.
Yeah, exactly. And that was my view as well. I mean, you know, we all know Alan Jones does wield an enormous amount of power in Sydney, but also I guess more broadly.
Yeah.
And it does seem odd to sort of want to draw yourself into that.
Well, this is the thing, yeah. Look, there's a couple of other ones I want to get to here, which are quite specific, and then we'll bounce through everything else here, which is, Fiona, how do you feel about this idea about a big Australia? Are you somebody who is, sidling up? Do you like the idea of the 8.5 million people in Sydney and Melbourne idea, or like Dick Smith? Well, the words he uses, and I'm not putting them in your mouth, but is basically it's a Ponzi scheme. The more people we are, then you need more people to pay for them. The older they get, the more. How do you feel about 80 or 100 million people for Australia?
I wouldn't really necessarily want to put a number on it myself. I think it's about a sustainable Australia, and I know that's been a term bandied around for a long time. Look, I live in an area where infrastructure hasn't been invested in for a very long time. The government is now investing in the infrastructure there. For the people of my community in Lindsay, we're having a Canberra built to the north, a Canberra built to the south. They're saying another 2 million people will move into Western Sydney alone. That has a big impact of how you manage the environmental impact, how you manage the infrastructure, keeping pace with the population growth. Yeah. There's various things that have to be taken into account here. What can our country bear? How do we grow the food that we need to feed our community and the people around the world that we do actually grow food for?
Well, thankfully, immigration policy is not set by state governments. Otherwise, it'd be 6 billion people because they want the stamp duty that goes with all the extra properties. Winners and losers time. Sarah Lamarquin, who stands out for you as a winner and or loser this week?
From winner, I'm going to nominate George Brandis. Now, I know he's had a rough few weeks, but I think the best thing that could have happened to him is someone deciding to sue Mike Carlton using 18C, which of course was the section from the Racial Discrimination Act he wanted to repeal. And all of a sudden, people are going to realise they're not just the Bolt laws. It's not just about silencing Andrew Bolt. It's actually about silencing anyone that anyone deems offence. And so it is. I think it's a good idea. It's really important.
I'm officially out of time, so the bumper sticker version, almost 2 words, if you will. Winner or loser of the week?
I think for me, the loser of the week is for all of us having lost Robin Williams and that reminder of the fragility of mental health.
Bloody oath. Fiona?
You took my words exactly.
Well, with that we have to go. All right.
Unity ticket.
One and all, thank you very much. Yeah, obviously about Robin Williams as well. All the best to you. We'll see you again Sunday night at 9 o'clock Eastern, so set your series link now. Have a great weekend. Go Yankees. Ta-da.
If credit card debt is hot on your heels, you'll need to shake it off. And with a NAB credit card, you can leave it far behind. That's because you'll get 0% per annum on balance transfers for 15 months on a new NAB premium card. Less under pressure, more on track. Apply for 0% per annum on balance transfers for 15 months. NAB premium card. More give, less take.
How much are drivers saving with Coles Car Insurance Price Beat Guarantee?
I saved $121 on my 2009 Hyundai Tucson.
Jump online or call today to find out. We also offer home insurance.